I've been getting a lot of requests for settings, both in stream and on YouTube comments. So we're going to do a quick run through of all of my settings. We'll clip it, we'll put it on YouTube. This is going to be a great video, and it'll be up sometime in the next week. But yeah, hopefully we can go through these in a few minutes and show what I'm using, which obviously a lot of it's preference, but I'll kind of explain my thought processes on why I'm using some stuff. Some stuff I'm really not sure. It's just kind of where I ended up. But anyways, I guess first and foremost, I should say I am using 4 paddles. This game specifically, compared to other Halos, has a lot of buttons that need to be pressed. I think you need at least 2 paddles. I felt like I needed more than that because there's a lot of other buttons that I would like to easily press without having to try to claw. I'm using 4 paddles. Really, I use 3 often. The 4th one I don't use much. I'm trying to get used to using all 4. But so I have a custom button layout. Generally, it's bumper jumper. I play bumper jumper. I have since Halo 3, and then I've customized it a bit. So what I did with my customizations, which I would advise if you're using any paddles, just to save some face buttons. Rather than having actual stuff on D-pad, because there is stuff that they put on D-pad. So I took, my thought process was take what I want to have on my paddles and put them there, but then map them to the D-pad so that I save the face buttons. So like, for example, on bumper jumper, the crouch and slide was B, I think. I actually don't even remember. But anyways, instead of having like sprint or crouch on B or A or something like that, I have them all on the D-pad, as well as my use equipment. So my sprint, slide, crouch, and my equipment, which I use often, are all 3 mapped to my D-pad. But then I map my paddles to my D-pad, and that frees up my A and B button, which are easier to claw or even just take my thumb off and press for, some other things that I might want to use, like the scan or the ping system. I've been pinging a lot. But yeah, I have my ping on X actually. But yeah, so that's kind of my thought process behind that. Vibration on, I've always used Vibe since Halo 1. Kind of just preference. Feel naked without it. So a couple things. I have auto clamber on because I'm lazy. I might end up taking that off. I haven't played enough. It does screw me over from time to time. But also, the big one here is how you want step jump on. The description of it's weird, but it lets you jump higher. I remember Lucid told me this like a month or 2 ago, but basically, there's certain jumps that you would normally have to clamber up onto, but with step jump, if you jump crouch, you can just jump crouch up onto. It like boosts you up over the edge. You essentially just jump higher. So yeah, definitely want step jump on to save you a couple clambers around the map. Sensitivity. Sensitivities are definitely different based on FOV. So I guess I should say my FOV first. My field of view, I ended up on 104. I'll go through that real quick. I started on like 90. It felt like the shots didn't reg very well, so I messed around with it a bit. I bumped it to 100. The shots felt a little bit better on 100, so I bumped it again to 110, and the shots still felt even better. So generally, I feel like the shot reg feels better on higher FOV for the BR. But 110 felt a little bit too zoomed out for me, and like people were too small. So I tried to go down to 105. The game doesn't actually have a 105, so it puts you on 104. So 104 is 105, but I don't know. Somewhere between 100 and 110 feels like a sweet spot. I would say just go as high as you can without it feeling weird. But yeah, the higher the FOV, the slower your sensitivity feels. So anyways, I'm on 3.54. It's a pretty slow sensitivity. I feel like hitting your shots is just super important, and if you have good awareness, you should just be looking in the right spots anyways. But yeah, it just helps you with keeping your reticle on the person, especially when you lose aim assist, which happens often in this game. So nice to keep it tight. I ended up bumping. I heard a bunch of people were saying it's nice to have higher vertical. I tried bumping it a little bit more, and it felt a little too quick, but it does feel pretty natural to have it even just a half cents higher here for me. I like it better than 3.5, 3.5, having the vertical a little bit higher. Look Excel, I've just left on 2. My zoom levels is something that I did notice a big difference. Compared to other Halos, the zooms all felt slow, so I went and bumped them all. I don't know if they were all on 1.1 or 1.0 by default. I don't remember, but I bumped them either 0.1 or 0.2. But I have all of my zoom levels on 1.2 for the sensitivity. Dead zones, this is something that a lot of people head case about, and they feel like makes a huge difference. I actually have never messed with dead zones much historically throughout the other Halo titles. I don't know if it's placebo or not, but it has felt a little bit better since I lowered them from the default. Essentially what dead zones are, though, it's not that big of a deal. They're in the game for if you have stick drift on your controller. So if you were to take all your dead zones and put them down to 0, your stick you would just be looking off randomly without actually touching it, or moving randomly on your left stick without touching it. So the dead zone is essentially a very, very, very minute dead zone where the stick doesn't actually start moving. It doesn't start registering your input until it's been like moved a super small amount. We're talking like very micro adjustments. But I will say lowering it from the default makes it feel slightly more responsive. I don't know if it's placebo, but I would say lower it somewhere and put it somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on your controller. Some controllers might get stick drift on 5 still. So just, in theory, lower it as much as you can without getting stick drift. But at the same time, the difference between like 3 and 5, I don't think anyone's going to actually feel that difference. We're talking about like, you'd have to have the most insane reaction time. I don't think a human would feel a difference between like one dead zone difference of input. But anyways, somewhere between 5 and 10 I think would be good. I just ended up putting all mine on 5. I think Formal had that for a while, so I just put it on that and it's felt fine. That's mostly it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else important. You know, graphics settings. You want as many frames as you can get. I turned VSync off. These are all settings that, wizards have given me that say that it optimizes the frames that I'm getting. I don't have the best rig. Still running on a 1080 here. But yeah, these were actually given to me by Mikwin during the alpha launch, or the flight test, whatever it was. And supposedly it was the best for that. I don't know if it's the same for the full build, but I've just left it because it's mostly low anyways. But he did have a couple things that he said should be on Ultra for whatever reason. So if you want to copy these, you can. I'll just scroll through them slowly. But most of my stuff's on low. The game still looks great. Couple things on Ultra. So definitely a few things down here that you're going to want to take off. You're going to want to take off blur. You don't ever want any kind of blur in an FPS game when you're competing. Maybe if you're playing campaign and you want like the realism. Screen shake off, no thanks. Speed lines off unless you want to be like Naruto, fucking flying around the map with your little speed lines. Yeah, just visual effects that are unnecessary and will even possibly hinder. So I guess the other big one is the offsets, right? I always get people asking about the offsets. Where are the offsets? This is my offsets. So I just did it for all of them. I did -100, -100, +100. It basically makes the weapons all like as skinny as they can be, so they just don't take up as much of your screen. And then on top of that, they feel, it's just placebo, but your BR feels like a little extra tighter, you know what I mean? You got a little skinny BR. But yeah, that's it. Those are my settings. Again, some of it is preference and just kind of feel it out, but generally a slower to medium sensitivity, as with every Halo. You know, all the top pros are playing in somewhere in the somewhere in the 3 to 5 sensitivity range, scaling with FOV. So some of them might be on like 6 to 7, but that's if they're on like 120 FOV, which is really the same as like a 5 on 100 FOV. So yeah, definitely not worth it to have like an insanely fast sensitivity. Important to hit your shots. Uh, yeah, everything else is pretty standard. And hope some of this helps you out. Try it. If you don't like it, feel free to change it, because a lot of it's preference. And let's get into gaming.